I was lucky enough to get a chance to ask some questions to the well-known leader, Ayatollah Khomeini, the supreme spiritual leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. He is also one of the main men who spearheaded the Iranian Revolution of 1979, where the people of Iran overthrew the oppressive government of Reza Shah and implemented an Islamic government that we know today. Thank you for joining us, Mr. Khomeini. How are you doing this morning?
Very well, thank you.
So, this morning we'd like to ask you some questions about the major events in your life. Now, for us that don't know about you or the things that you've done in your life, would you care to give us a brief overview?
Sure, I'd be happy to explain. I was born on September 24th, 1902, in the small town of Khomeini. My family has a long tradition of religious scholarship, and so because of this, I study Islamic religious science in Qom. Before the Shah announced White Revolution modernization plans, I had not involved myself in politics. But when he began, then I believed I had to intervene because of negative implications it would have on the Islamic community. As you might know, I'm the former supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and I spearheaded the revolt against the oppressive regime of Reza Shah, the former leader of Iran. During the mid-1950s, I was exiled from Iran by the Shah for my constant criticism of his rule. I'll admit that went far enough to say that if he continued his anti-Islamic activities in the name of his modernization programs, I would support his forceful removal from power.
So, you said you've actually never involved yourself in the politics of your region before this, but what inspired you to become active in this area?
Many people in my family disagreed with leading a political life, and I was raised to believe politics corrupted people. I began to become active because the Shahs negatively affected the Islamic population.
So what was the main aspect of the former government that inspired you to lead the revolt?
The oppressive government of Reza Shah made too many mistakes to hold his power with dignity. He was trying to recreate the Iranian identity to be identical to one of America. He wanted to erase our national culture and westernize our society. Although this in itself was unspeakable to us, the mistakes and problems caused by these modernization plans and the damage it caused to our nation was disastrous.
Could you please elaborate? What were these problems exactly?
Well, the Shah had the idea of trying to make the nation of Iran into a highly industrialized and modern state. By doing this, he had to dramatically alter the economic and social structure of the country. Once the Shah began to implement his economic modernization ideas throughout the country, he made the grave mistake of promising too much and delivering too little. The result of rapid industrialization, without taking into account low productivity, a lack of skilled personnel, shortage of port facilities, and other shortcomings, were disastrous. The Shah's ambitious industrialization plans drained the treasury. The Shah amorously turned oil bonanza into a terrible industrialization failure. Along with this, he invested some $70 billion abroad and essentially removed this money from our economy. When this was discovered, many of the higher class Iranians decided to invest abroad instead of domestic companies, which created a negative cash flow in our economy.
What about the restructuring of the social structure of the nation? What effect did this have on the culture and the overall being of the people of Iran?
The revolution was not so much of a takeover by certain political groups, but more of a social uprising organized and taken on by the people. And a high degree of participation from all social classes allowed it to be highly successful and organized. During this time, I had been implementing certain revolts throughout the country, but still most were organized by the average citizens in their dislike of the Shah. Every segment of society took up some role in the revolution. An Islamic-educated, secular, westernized society, leadership only appeared later on.
What exactly did these plans call for?
The Shah's modernization plans called for reforms to create an educated, secularized Western society modeled after one such as the United States. Through these reforms, traditional Iranian society would be destroyed, which is highly disliked by many in the traditional Muslim society.
What happened after the opposition overthrew the Shah? What did you do to change the Iranian government to what you best saw fit?
After the overthrow, the Shah was exiled from the new republic. I was allowed to re-enter the country and was greeted by millions of fellow revolutionaries. Throughout my exile, I was able to send message and preach revolution by recording them in tapes that were disguised as musical tapes. I then had to send them into Iran, then duplicated by loyal revolutionaries. Because of this, I did not have to convince them of my plans. When I was declared supreme leader on February 14, 1979, I gathered up an assembly of experts and drew up a new constitution based on the Islamic religion and its ideals. I ruled until June 13, 1989.
Mr. Khomeini, It seems that you've led an amazing life and that you spearheaded one of the biggest revolutions in the history of the Middle East. You were able to implement your one-of-a-kind government, never before used, yet it's still successful in the country today. Thank you very much for taking the time to conduct this interview.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Ron Burgundy, Channel 5, Action News.